I thought I was walking into my dream job at TechFlow Industries when the founder's son Marcus fired me on my very first day. He strutted into the conference room like he owned the place, which technically he would someday, and announced I was terminated, effective immediately. The board members watched in stunned silence as security escorted me out. What Marcus didn't know was that my contract contained a very special clause that his father had insisted on, a clause that would cost him exactly $120,000 every single hour. My name is Ernestine, and at 29 years old, I thought I had finally made it. After 6 years climbing the ranks as a software architect in Silicon Valley, I had been personally recruited by Harold Brennan himself, the legendary founder of TechFlow Industries. The company was worth $2.8 billion and preparing for the biggest government contract bid in their history. The recruitment process had taken 6 months of intense negotiations. Harold insisted on unusual contract terms that my lawyer called overly protective, but I trusted his reputation. Everyone in tech knew Harold Brennan as someone who valued talent and protected his people fiercely. The man had built his empire by recognizing brilliance and giving it room to flourish. I flew from San Francisco to Austin, Texas, with my entire life packed into 2 suitcases and a heart full of hope. TechFlow's headquarters towered 30 floors above the Austin skyline, all glass and steel reaching toward endless possibilities. My artificial intelligence algorithm would be the centerpiece of their Department of Defense presentation, a project that could expand from $50 million to $500 million if successful. The first red flag appeared during my orientation meeting with HR. A man I hadn't met before burst through the conference room doors without knocking. He was tall, probably 6'2", with the kind of artificial confidence that screamed insecurity underneath. His expensive suit couldn't hide the nervous energy radiating from every movement. "I'm Marcus Brennan," he announced, as if his last name should mean something to everyone in the room. VP of Operations. I knew Harold had a son, but it assumed he would be professional. Marcus looked like he was 31 or 32, with perfectly styled brown hair and a smile that never reached his eyes. The HR director, a kind woman named Janet, immediately tensed up. "Marcus, we're just finishing Ernestine's orientation. She's the new lead architect your father hired for the AI project." His expression shifted from fake friendliness to something much colder. "Right. The one Dad hired without consulting me." 3 board members happened to be in the building that day for a quarterly review. Dr. Sarah Chen, the chief technology officer, was a brilliant woman in her 50s who had built TechFlow's technical infrastructure from the ground up. Robert Walsh, the chief financial officer, was a numbers guy who could spot financial inefficiency from a mile away. Most importantly, Margaret Torres, the company's head legal counsel, was known for her meticulous attention to contract details. All 3 were present when Marcus made his move. "I've reviewed your background, Ernestine," Marcus said, pulling out a folder that looked suspiciously thin. "There are some irregularities in your employment history that concern me." My stomach dropped. I knew my background was spotless. I had never even gotten a speeding ticket, let alone done anything that would show up in an employment screening. "What kind of irregularities?" Dr. Chen asked, leaning forward with genuine concern. Marcus opened the folder and shuffled through what appeared to be blank papers. "Security concerns, questions about your previous employer relationships. I can't go into details, but I cannot in good conscience allow someone with these red flags to work on our most sensitive project." Margaret Torres frowned deeply. "Marcus, I reviewed Ernestine's background check personally. It was completely clean. Perhaps we should discuss this privately before making any hasty decisions." "No," Marcus said sharply. "This is exactly the kind of decisive leadership this company needs. Dad's been too soft, too trusting. We cannot risk our Defense Department contract on someone whose loyalty is questionable." Robert Walsh looked confused. "But Harold specifically brought her in for this project. Shouldn't we at least call him before making a termination decision? Dad's in Singapore until tomorrow, Marcus replied smoothly. By the time he gets back, we'll have found a suitable replacement. I'm making the call that protects this company's interests. The room fell silent except for the humming of fluorescent lights overhead. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and confusion. Nothing Marcus was saying made sense, but he had the authority to destroy my career with a single decision. "I'm terminating your employment effective immediately," Marcus announced, standing up to make himself appear more imposing. "Security will escort you out. You'll receive your final paycheck within 72 hours. Dr. Chen and Robert Walsh exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their discomfort with the situation. Margaret Torres looked like she wanted to physically restrain Marcus from speaking further. "This seems extremely premature," Dr. Chen said carefully. "Perhaps we should table this discussion until Harold returns." "The decision is final," Marcus snapped. "I won't have this company's reputation damaged by poor hiring decisions." Security appeared within minutes. Two large men in navy blazers who treated me with apologetic professionalism. As they escorted me through the office, I could see employees watching with confusion and sympathy. Word travels fast in any workplace, and everyone seemed to understand that something unusual was happening. I packed my belongings from the desk I had occupied for exactly 4 hours. My new nameplate still had the plastic wrapping on it. My company laptop was confiscated, along with the security badge that had my smiling photo from that morning's orientation. The walk through the lobby felt like the longest journey of my life. Every step echoed off the marble floors, each sound a reminder of my professional humiliation. The security guards walked beside me silently, probably as confused as everyone else about why someone would be fired on their first day. Just as we reached the revolving door, Margaret Torres appeared beside me. Without speaking, she slipped a business card into my hand along with what felt like a small piece of paper. "I'm sorry this happened," she said loud enough for security to hear. Then, much quieter, she whispered, "Check your phone at 5 p.m. Trust me." The automatic doors swooshed shut behind me, and I stood on the sidewalk outside TechFlow Industries. My entire career dream shattered before it had even begun. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly as I called a rideshare to take me back to my temporary apartment. That was when I realized Margaret's business card had a handwritten note on the back. "Don't come to work tomorrow. You'll see why." The rideshare driver tried to make small talk during the 20-minute drive to my furnished apartment, but I couldn't focus on anything except the catastrophic destruction of my carefully planned career move. I had given up a 6-figure job in Silicon Valley, sold my condo, and moved to a state where I knew nobody. Now I was unemployed, homeless in 90 days when my temporary lease expired, and professionally humiliated. My apartment was a sterile corporate housing unit with beige walls and furniture that looked like it came from a hotel catalog. I sat on the generic couch and stared at Margaret's business card, trying to understand what had just happened to my life. At 3:30 p.m., I called my mentor, Dr. Patricia Williams. Patricia had been my computer science professor at Stanford and had become like a second mother to me over the years. She was one of the few people who knew about Harold Brennan's personal recruitment of me to TechFlow. "Ernestine, how's your first day going?" Her warm voice made me want to cry. I explained everything that had happened, from Marcus' bizarre accusations to the security escort out of the building. Patricia listened without interrupting, which I appreciated because I needed to get the whole story out before I lost my composure completely. "That doesn't sound like Harold Brennan at all," Patricia said when I finished. "I've known Harold for 15 years. Has many things, but impulsive isn't one of them. And he certainly doesn't hire people lightly, especially for projects this important. Maybe he made a mistake with me," I said, feeling defeated. "Absolutely not. Harold called me personally to ask about you. He said he needed someone with your specific combination of technical skills and integrity. He was very particular about the integrity part, actually," said he needed someone he could trust completely. This information made Marcus' actions even more confusing. If Harold had done such thorough research on me, how could his son have found problems that didn't exist? There's something else, Patricia. The company lawyer slipped me a note telling me not to come to work tomorrow and to check my phone at 5 p.m. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. That's very interesting. Margaret Torres is known for being extremely careful about legal matters. If she's telling you to stay away from the office, there's definitely more to this story. I spent the next hour and a half pacing around my apartment, checking the time every few minutes. At exactly 5 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Don't go to work today. You'll see why." The message was unsigned, but I knew it had to be from Margaret. My hands were shaking as I opened my laptop and pulled up the employment contract I had signed with TechFlow. The document was 43 pages long, full of legal language that I had skimmed through during the excitement of getting my dream job. I started reading more carefully, paying attention to clauses I had glossed over before. Most of it was standard employment language about responsibilities, compensation, and confidentiality agreements. But on page 36, I found something that made my heart race. Unilateral Termination Protection Clause. In the event that the employee is terminated without documented cause within the first 90 days of employment, any work stoppage resulting from employee's absence shall be billable to the company at a rate of $120,000 per hour, calculated from the time of termination until either employee is reinstated or a suitable replacement is found and fully operational. I read the clause 3 times to make sure I understood it correctly. Harold had insisted on this specific language during our contract negotiations. At the time, I thought it was just his way of showing confidence in my abilities. Now I realized it was a sophisticated legal protection that would cost TechFlow a fortune if someone like Marcus made an impulsive decision. But there was more. The clause went on to specify that suitable replacement meant someone with equivalent qualifications who could perform all of employees' duties without training or transition period. Given the specialized nature of my artificial intelligence work and the immediate timeline for the Defense Department presentation, finding such a replacement would be virtually impossible. I grabbed my phone and started researching TechFlow's current situation. According to industry publications, they were exactly 48 hours away from their crucial presentation to Department of Defense officials. My specific AI algorithm was designed to demonstrate real-time threat assessment capabilities that no other company could replicate. The government contract required the lead architect to be present for security clearance verification and technical explanation. Without me, TechFlow couldn't just demonstrate the system. They couldn't even access the secure servers where my code was stored. My mind raced as I calculated the financial implications. If Marcus had fired me at approximately 11 a.m., and the Defense Department presentation was scheduled for Thursday at 10 a.m., that was potentially 47 hours of billable time at $120,000 per hour. $5,640,000. I called Patricia back immediately. "I found something," I said, and read her the termination clause. Patricia whistled low. Harold Brennan is even more brilliant than I thought. He anticipated this exact scenario and built in a protection mechanism. But why would he expect his own son to fire me? Maybe he knows his son better than anyone else does. Harold built TechFlow from nothing into a nearly $3 billion company. You don't do that without understanding people's motivations and weaknesses. I was about to respond when my laptop chimed with a new email. The sender was listed as concerned friend, but the message was clearly from someone inside TechFlow. Check the financial records. Marcus has bigger problems than you know. Attached to the email was a series of bank statements and financial documents that made my blood run cold. Marcus Brennan had been systematically embezzling money from TechFlow Industries for at least 8 months. The amounts started small, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, but escalated to 6-figure transfers in recent weeks. The documents showed wire transfers to offshore gambling websites, cash advances against company credit cards, and forged expense reports totaling nearly $700,000. Marcus wasn't just an impulsive executive making bad decisions. He was a criminal who was desperate enough to steal from his own father's company. My phone buzzed with another text message. Emergency board meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. Harold's flying back early. The truth comes out then. I realized that Margaret Torres wasn't just trying to protect me. She was orchestrating a careful legal strategy to expose Marcus' crimes while using my termination clause to demonstrate his incompetence to the board. But I also realized that Harold Brennan might have anticipated this entire scenario. The question was, why had he really hired me? And what did he know about his son that he hadn't shared with anyone else? I didn't sleep at all that night. By 6 a.m., I was dressed and drinking my third cup of coffee while monitoring TechFlow's situation from my laptop. Industry news sites were starting to pick up rumors about problems with their Defense Department presentation, and their stock price had dropped 2% in early trading. At 7:45 a.m., Margaret Torres called me directly. "Ernestine, I need you to be available by phone at 8:15 this morning. Don't go anywhere near the TechFlow building, but be ready to discuss your contract situation. What's happening?" "Justice," she said simply, and hung up. I later learned what transpired in that boardroom from Margaret's detailed account. Harold Brennan had flown through the night from Singapore, arriving at 6 a.m. local time. By the time he walked into TechFlow's executive conference room at 8 o'clock sharp, he looked like a man who had been anticipating this moment for months. The board was assembled. Dr. Sarah Chen, Robert Walsh, Margaret Torres, and 3 external board members, including former Texas Governor Linda Rodriguez. Marcus arrived 10 minutes late, looking disheveled and nervous. "Where's my new lead architect?" Harold asked without preamble. The room fell silent. Marcus shifted in his seat but didn't respond. "Marcus," Harold continued calmly, "I hired Ernestine specifically for this Defense Department presentation. The meeting is in exactly 26 hours. Where is she?" Dr. Chen spoke up carefully. "There was an incident yesterday. Marcus made a decision to terminate her employment." Harold's expression didn't change, but everyone in the room could feel the temperature drop. On what grounds? Marcus finally found his voice. "Security concerns. Background check irregularities. I was protecting the company's interests." "Show me the background check," Harold said. Marcus fumbled with his folder, but couldn't produce any actual documentation. Margaret Torres slid a tablet across the table to Harold. "This is Ernestine's actual background check," she said. "Completely clean. No irregularities whatsoever." Harold studied the documents for exactly 30 seconds before looking up at his son. "Marcus, do you understand what you've done? I made a tough leadership decision that you were too soft to make," Marcus replied, his voice gaining confidence. "This company needs someone willing to make hard choices." That's when Margaret Torres delivered her bombshell. "Before we continue," she announced, "I need to inform the board of a significant financial liability we've incurred. Ernestine's employment contract contains a termination protection clause that Harold insisted upon during negotiations. Any work stoppage resulting from her wrongful termination costs this company $120,000 per hour." She projected a calculator display onto the conference room screen. "Ernestine was terminated yesterday at approximately 11 a.m. It is now 8:10 a.m., which represents 21 hours and 10 minutes of billable time." The numbers appeared in large font. $2,544,000, $2.5 million, Robert Walsh said quietly. "And counting." Marcus' face went pale. "That's impossible. No employment contract has clauses like that." "This one does," Margaret replied, projecting the actual contract language onto the screen. Harold's signature, board approval from 6 months ago, and your initials on every page acknowledging that you had reviewed and understood all terms. Harold leaned back in his chair, and for the first time since entering the room, he almost smiled. Tell them about the Defense Department presentation, Margaret. Without Ernestine present, we cannot demonstrate our AI system to government officials. The security protocols require the lead architect to be physically present for classified briefings. The system will not function without her biometric authorization and access codes. Governor Rodriguez spoke up for the first time. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying that Marcus' decision has potentially cost us a $50 million contract and may result in legal action from the Department of Defense for breach of contract. The room erupted in angry voices. External board members demanded explanations. Dr. Chen looked like she wanted to physically remove Marcus from the building. Robert Walsh was frantically calculating the full financial impact on his laptop. Marcus tried desperately to regain control. This is sabotage! She deliberately hid this clause to manipulate us. She's probably working for our competitors. Harold's calm voice cut through the chaos. Marcus, stop talking. No, I won't stop. You've always undermined my authority in this company. You hire outsiders instead of promoting from within. You make decisions without consulting the operational team. This woman is a security risk, and I stand by my decision to fire her. That's when Harold opened his briefcase and placed a thick folder on the conference table. Margaret, would you please explain to the board what this folder contains? Margaret's expression was grimly satisfied. Financial records showing systematic embezzlement by Marcus Brennan over the past 8 months. Wire transfers to offshore gambling accounts, forged expense reports, unauthorized cash advances, and theft of company funds, totaling approximately $700,000. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus' face cycled through several colors before settling on a grayish-white. That's not possible, he whispered. FBI Financial Crimes Unit has been investigating for 3 weeks, Harold said quietly. They have complete documentation of your gambling debts, your money laundering attempts, and your theft from this company. Marcus stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair. You set me up. This whole thing is a setup to destroy me. No, son, Harold replied sadly. You destroyed yourself. I just documented it. But Marcus wasn't finished. His desperation had reached a point where rational thinking was no longer possible. Fine, he said, his voice taking on a threatening tone. But if I go down, you're coming with me, Dad. I know about the securities violations from 2006. I know about the insider trading. I know about the bribery scandal you covered up. You think you can destroy me and keep your own secrets buried. The board members looked shocked at this revelation. Harold's past was something that had never been discussed openly, and Marcus' accusations could potentially destroy not just his father but the entire company. Harold nodded slowly. Margaret, please show them the SEC documents. Margaret projected another set of documents onto the screen. In 2007, Harold voluntarily reported his mistakes to the Securities and Exchange Commission, made full restitution of $4.2 million, and agreed to enhanced oversight procedures that remain in place today. Everything Marcus just mentioned was resolved legally and transparently 15 years ago. She switched to a new screen. Marcus' crimes, however, are current and ongoing. The FBI raid is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Marcus realized his final gambit had failed completely. His blackmail attempt had not only been anticipated, it had been neutralized years before he even thought of it. But he had one more card to play, and it would reveal the true depth of his desperation. Marcus' face twisted into something I had never seen before as Margaret finished explaining Harold's past legal resolution. The mask of professionalism completely fell away, revealing someone who had been pushed far beyond rational thought. Fine, Marcus said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You want to play games? Let's see how much your precious AI project is worth when there's nothing left to demonstrate. He pulled out his phone and started typing frantically. Within seconds, alarms began blaring throughout the TechFlow building. Marcus had triggered the emergency system shutdown protocol, which would wipe all servers within 15 minutes as a protection against cyber attacks. "What have you done, Doctor?" Chen shouted, leaping up from her chair. "Insurance," Marcus replied with a smile that looked completely unhinged. "If I can't have this company, nobody can. The entire AI system will be destroyed in 14 minutes. Game over." Margaret Torres was already on her phone with building security while Robert Walsh tried desperately to override the shutdown sequence from his laptop. But Marcus had used his father's administrative codes, which gave him the highest level of access to company systems. Harold sat perfectly still during this chaos, watching his son's complete mental breakdown with something that looked like profound sadness rather than anger. "Margaret, call Ernestine. Now." "Dad, what are you doing?" Marcus demanded. "Something I should have done months ago," Harold replied quietly. "I'm trusting the right person to fix the problems you've created." My phone rang at exactly 8:36 a.m. Margaret's voice was tense but controlled. "Ernestine, we need you to access the TechFlow systems remotely and stop an emergency shutdown sequence." "Can you do that?" "I can try," I said, already opening my laptop, "but I'll need my access credentials restored." "Already done. Check your email for temporary passwords." While I worked frantically to prevent Marcus from destroying months of development work, Margaret updated me on what was happening in the boardroom. Marcus had essentially declared war on his own company and family, willing to destroy everything rather than face the consequences of his crimes. But I had an advantage that Marcus didn't know about. During my brief time in the TechFlow systems the day before, I had noticed several security vulnerabilities and had automatically created backup protocols. It was a habit I had developed in Silicon Valley after watching too many companies lose critical data to various disasters. "Got it," I told Margaret after 20 minutes of intensive coding. "System shutdown prevented, and I've created a secure partition that Marcus can't access. The AI demonstration can proceed as scheduled." I could hear relief in her voice. "There's something else. Harold wants to offer you a new position. Not just reinstatement, but a full partnership in the company. A partnership, 20% ownership, seat on the board of directors, and complete autonomy over the technology division. He's essentially offering to make you his successor." I was stunned. 12 hours ago I had been unemployed and humiliated. Now I was being offered a stake in a $3 billion company. What about Marcus? "The board is voting to remove him from all positions immediately. The FBI will handle the criminal charges." But even as Margaret spoke, I could hear shouting in the background. Marcus' desperation had reached a new level. Hez threatening to hire private security to physically retake control of the building, Margaret said urgently. Hez claiming corporate sabotage and demanding that everyone in the boardroom be arrested. This was escalating beyond corporate drama into something genuinely dangerous. Marcus was no longer thinking rationally, and desperate people with money and connections could cause serious harm. "Margaret, get everyone out of that building," I said. "I'm calling the police. We can't leave." The Defense Department representatives arrive in 18 hours for the presentation. If we're not here to meet them, we lose the contract regardless of Marcus' actions. I realized that Harold's master plan, brilliant as it was, hadn't accounted for his son's complete psychological breakdown. Marcus was now willing to use violence to maintain control, which changed everything. "There's something else you need to know," Margaret said quietly. "Harold wants to tell you something about why he really hired you. It's not just about your technical skills." "What do you mean?" "Hell, explain when this is over." "But Ernestine, there's a personal connection here that goes back much further than your career." Before I could ask what she meant, the line went dead. According to the news reports I found online later, Marcus had cut the building's main phone lines and disabled the cellular repeaters to prevent anyone from calling for help. I was sitting in my apartment, unable to physically help the people who had defended me, watching a situation spiral completely out of control. The termination clause that was supposed to protect my career had instead triggered a corporate war that could result in people getting hurt. But I still had remote access to TechFlow's systems, and I was beginning to understand that Harold had given me much more than just a job opportunity. He had given me the tools to save his company, and potentially his life. The question was whether I was brave enough to use them. I called Dr. Patricia Williams. "I need you to come to Austin immediately. Bring your lawyer. And Patricia, call the FBI field office here. Tell them that TechFlow Industries needs immediate assistance for a domestic terrorism situation." "Ernestine, what's happening?" "I'm about to find out what I'm really capable of." While Patricia drove from Dallas to Austin, I worked furiously from my apartment to maintain remote control of TechFlow's critical systems. Through security cameras, I could see that Marcus had indeed hired private security contractors who were setting up a perimeter around the building. Local police had arrived but seemed confused about whose authority took precedence in what appeared to be a corporate dispute. At 11 a.m., Harold called me directly from the locked boardroom. "Ernestine, I need to tell you something that will change how you understand this entire situation." "Harold, are you safe? Do you need me to call more help?" "We're secure for now. But there's a reason Marcus is so desperate to destroy you specifically, and it's not just about the Defense Department contract." Harold's voice was heavy with emotion I had never heard before. 29 years ago, I made the worst mistake of my life. I abandoned someone I loved because my family threatened to disown me if I didn't marry the woman they chose for me. My heart started racing for reasons I couldn't explain. Her name was Linda Chen. She was brilliant, beautiful, and pregnant with my child. My parents forced me to choose between my inheritance and the woman I loved. I was 25 years old and chose money over love. The room felt like it was spinning around me. Dr. Sarah Chen, the chief technology officer who had defended me in yesterday's meeting. Linda kept her maiden name when she married Dr. James Chen 2 years later. He raised you as his own daughter, and you never knew that your biological father was the founder of TechFlow Industries. I couldn't breathe. Every successful moment of my career, every opportunity that had led me to TechFlow, suddenly felt like manipulation rather than achievement. "You've been watching me my entire life," I whispered. "Not watching. Protecting. Making sure you had opportunities. Making sure your path led here when the time was right. The contract clause. This whole situation. You orchestrated everything." "Not everything," Harold said quietly. "I couldn't control Marcus' gambling addiction or his decision to steal from the company. I couldn't predict that he would fire you out of jealousy and insecurity. But I knew that if something like this happened, you would be protected." Margaret Torres took the phone. "Ernestine, there's something else. Harold is sick." "What kind of sick?" "Early-stage dementia. Has been hiding it for 6 months, but the symptoms are getting worse. He hired you not just to save the company, but to ensure that someone with his values and intelligence would be positioned to take over when he can no longer function." I felt like I was drowning in revelations that rewrote my entire understanding of my life. Every achievement felt tainted by the possibility that it wasn't really mine. But the illness diagnosis isn't entirely true, Margaret continued. Harold exaggerated the severity to create urgency around succession planning. The dementia is real but much slower progressing than he told the board. Even in his honesty, Harold was still manipulating the situation. "I need to see you face to face," I told Harold. "This conversation can't happen over the phone." "That might not be possible. Marcus has armed guards at every entrance." That's when I realized I had more power than anyone understood. Through my remote access to TechFlow's systems, I controlled not just the AI project, but the building's entire security infrastructure. "Harold, in exactly 10 minutes, the emergency exits on the north side of the building are going to unlock automatically. Have Margaret and any board members who want to leave use those exits." Local police will escort you to safety. What about the Defense Department presentation? Leave that to me. I called the Austin Police Department and explained that I was a TechFlow employee with remote access to the building systems. I could provide safe passage for executives who were being held against their will by unauthorized private security forces. While police coordinated the evacuation of non-essential personnel, I made another discovery that changed everything again. In Harold's personal files, which my administrative access allowed me to review, I found medical records that told a very different story. Harold's dementia wasn't exaggerated. It was much worse than he had admitted to anyone. Brain scans showed advanced deterioration that would likely make him incompetent within 12 to 18 months. His recent behavior, including the elaborate scheme to bring me to TechFlow, was probably influenced by cognitive decline that was affecting his judgment and impulse control. The man I thought was a master manipulator was actually a brilliant but deteriorating mind, desperately trying to secure his daughter's future before he lost the ability to think clearly. But there was one more file that made me question everything I thought I knew about my own identity. My adoption records. The documents clearly showed that Linda Chen had given birth to a daughter on March 15, 1994. But hospital records showed that baby had died 3 days later from complications related to premature birth. I was born on March 20, 1994, to parents whose names were redacted in all official documents. Harold Brennan was not my biological father. Just as this revelation hit me, my laptop screen filled with an emergency alert. Marcus had managed to override my security lockout and was attempting to wipe all TechFlow servers again. But this time, he was also deleting financial records that would hide evidence of his embezzlement. I had 30 seconds to decide whether to save the company of a man who had lied to me about everything or let his criminal son destroy evidence that would keep him out of prison. The choice was easier than it should have been. I saved Harold's company, not because he was my father, but because it was the right thing to do. By 2 p.m., the situation outside TechFlow Industries had escalated into a full-scale standoff. Marcus had hired 12 private security contractors from a firm that specialized in corporate asset protection, which made them well-armed and trained in defensive tactics. They had established a perimeter around the building and were claiming legal authority to prevent anyone from entering or leaving. Local police were outgunned and confused about jurisdiction. The private contractors had valid licenses and were technically protecting private property at the request of a company executive. Without clear evidence of criminal activity, police couldn't legally intervene. That's when the FBI arrived. Agent Sarah Morrison from the Austin field office had received Patricia's call about domestic terrorism, but more importantly, the federal government's interest in the Defense Department contract gave them jurisdiction over the situation. Within minutes of their arrival, the FBI had surrounded Marcus' private security team. From my apartment, I coordinated with law enforcement through my remote access to the building's systems. I could see everything happening through security cameras and control access to different areas of the facility. "This is Agent Morrison," came a voice through my laptop speakers. "We understand you have system access and can facilitate safe extraction of personnel. Most board members escaped through the north exits an hour ago," I replied. "But Harold Brennan, Dr. Sarah Chen, and Robert Walsh are still in the executive boardroom on the 30th floor. Marcus has the elevators disabled and stairwells blocked. Can you restore elevator function?" "Yes, but Marcus has override codes that could trap people between floors. Give me 5 minutes to create a secure elevator protocol that only I can control." While I worked on the technical solution, the media had discovered the story. News vans surrounded TechFlow Industries, broadcasting live footage of FBI agents confronting private military contractors in what was being described as an unprecedented corporate siege. The story was going viral on social media. TechFlow siege was trending nationwide, with speculation about corporate coups, family warfare, and government contract corruption. Stock markets were reacting badly to the uncertainty, with TechFlow's value dropping 15% in afternoon trading. Inside the building, Marcus was making increasingly erratic decisions. Through security cameras, I could see him pacing the executive floor, shouting at employees who were too terrified to leave their offices. He had completely lost touch with reality, believing that his private security team gave him legal authority to control the company. Elevator secure, I reported to Agent Morrison. Sending car to 30th floor now. But just as the elevator doors opened to extract Harold and the remaining board members, Marcus made his final, most dangerous decision. He pulled a fire alarm. Building safety protocols automatically locked down all elevators and activated emergency lighting. Sprinkler systems engaged throughout the facility, soaking computer equipment and creating chaos. Most importantly, the fire alarm triggered automatic emergency response procedures that brought the Austin Fire Department racing to the scene. Now we had FBI agents, local police, private security contractors, fire trucks, and news crews all converging on one building. The situation was becoming genuinely dangerous as different agencies with different priorities tried to coordinate their responses. Through it all, I maintained remote control of TechFlow's critical systems. The AI project data was secure in protected servers that only I could access. The Defense Department presentation could still proceed as scheduled if we could resolve the immediate crisis. But Marcus had one more card to play. At 3:15 p.m., he sent a company-wide email claiming that TechFlow was under cyber attack by foreign agents and that everyone in the building needed to evacuate immediately. He blamed me specifically, describing me as a Chinese spy working to steal American defense technology. This was completely false, but it gave his private security team justification to claim they were protecting national security assets from foreign infiltration. Local police, already confused about jurisdiction, became even more hesitant to intervene. That's when Harold called me directly from the stairwell, where he and the other board members were trapped. "Ernestine, I need you to know something. Whatever happens today, you've proven yourself to be exactly the leader this company needs. Not because of any family connection, real or imagined, but because of how you've handled this crisis. Harold, save your strength. We're going to get you out of there. No, listen to me. The dementia diagnosis is real, and it's progressing faster than I told Margaret. I may not remember this conversation tomorrow, but right now, in this moment, I need you to understand that everything I've done was to put the right person in position to save what I've built. You lied to me about being my father. Yes, because I needed you to feel a personal connection to this company strong enough to fight for it. I'm not your biological father, but I love you like a daughter, and I trust you like I've never trusted anyone else." Dr. Sarah Chen took the phone. "Ernestine, this is actually your Aunt Sarah. Your mother was my sister Linda, and when she died in a car accident when you were 3 months old, your father, Dr. James Chen, and I made sure you were adopted by a loving family. Harold has been your silent benefactor since you were a child, but not because he's your father, because he promised your mother on her deathbed that he would watch over you. The truth was somehow even more complicated than Harold's lie, but it felt more genuine. I wasn't Harold's secret daughter, but I was connected to this family in ways that went back to before I could remember. There's something else," Dr. Chen continued. "Marcus knows about your real family history. Has been trying to destroy you not just out of professional jealousy, but because has always resented Harold's emotional connection to your mother's family." That explained the personal hatred I had sensed from Marcus that seemed disproportionate to normal workplace dynamics. Agent Morrison's voice came through my speakers. "We've negotiated a peaceful surrender of the private security team. They're standing down and leaving the premises. We need to extract the remaining personnel immediately." I restored full elevator function and coordinated with FBI agents to safely extract Harold, Dr. Chen, and Robert Walsh from the building. Through security cameras, I watched as they were escorted to waiting ambulances as a precaution. Marcus was arrested without incident. Faced with federal charges for financial crimes, conspiracy, and domestic terrorism, he offered no resistance when FBI agents handcuffed him in the executive lobby. But the victory felt hollow because I realized that Harold's cognitive decline meant the man who had orchestrated my protection for 29 years might not remember any of it by next week. The Defense Department presentation was still scheduled for 8 a.m. the next morning. The Defense Department presentation took place exactly as scheduled, but in a conference room at the FBI field office rather than at TechFlow Industries. Agent Morrison arranged for secure video conferencing equipment that met government security standards, and I demonstrated the AI system remotely from my laptop. General Patricia Harrison and her team of Pentagon technical advisors were remarkably understanding about the unusual circumstances. If anything, the fact that TechFlow's system had remained functional throughout a corporate crisis actually impressed them as a sign of robust security architecture. "Miss Ernestine," General Harrison said after my 2-hour technical presentation, "your system performed flawlessly under the most challenging conditions imaginable. The Department of Defense is prepared to award TechFlow Industries the full contract, with the understanding that you will be the primary technical lead for implementation. The contract was worth $50 million initially, with expansion possibilities up to $500 million over 5 years. More importantly, it represented validation that my work had genuine value regardless of how I had arrived at TechFlow." 3 days later, I sat across from Harold in his lawyer's office for the formal transfer of company ownership. The medical evaluation Margaret had insisted upon confirmed that Harold's dementia was progressing rapidly, but he was still competent to make legal decisions. "I'm giving you 40% ownership of TechFlow Industries," Harold said, his voice clear but tired. "Not because I owe you anything, and not because of any family connection. I'm giving it to you because you've proven that you can protect what matters most about this company." What matters most? The people, the innovation, the integrity. Marcus saw TechFlow as a source of money and status. You see it as a responsibility to employees and clients. Margaret Torres had prepared documents that would make me Chief Executive Officer effective immediately, with Harold remaining as chairman until his condition required full retirement. Dr. Chen would continue as Chief Technology Officer. Robert Walsh would remain CFO, and Margaret would become General Counsel with expanded authority. Marcus pled guilty to 11 felony charges, including embezzlement, wire fraud, computer tampering, and conspiracy. His cooperation with federal investigators resulted in a sentence of 8 years in federal prison, with full restitution of $720,000 to TechFlow. He would be eligible for parole in 5 years, with good behavior. The termination clause that had started everything was officially invoked for a total cost of $4.8 million, representing 40 hours at $120,000 per hour. But that amount was insignificant compared to the Defense Department contract and the company's improved market position following the leadership transition. 6 months later, TechFlow Industries had grown from $2.8 billion to $4.2 billion in value. Our employee satisfaction surveys reached industry-leading levels, and we had been featured in 3 major business publications as a model for ethical corporate governance. I established the Linda Chen Memorial Foundation for Women in Technology, funded through my personal shares in the company. Harold's condition had progressed to the point where he required full-time memory care, but he had moments of clarity where he seemed genuinely proud of what we had accomplished. Dr. Patricia Williams joined TechFlow as Director of Research Development, bringing with her a team of brilliant graduate students who expanded our AI capabilities beyond anything I could have imagined alone. The company became known not just for technical innovation, but for collaborative leadership that brought out the best in everyone. On a personal level, I had learned to separate my professional achievements from the complicated family history that had brought me to TechFlow. Patricia introduced me to her nephew, David, a high school teacher whose completely different perspective on life helped me stay grounded despite the overwhelming changes in my career. The most important lesson I learned was about the difference between manipulation and mentorship. Harold had manipulated events to bring me to TechFlow, but he had also genuinely prepared me to succeed when I arrived. The technical skills, ethical foundation, and leadership capabilities I brought to the company were real, regardless of how the opportunity had been created. Marcus had tried to destroy me out of jealousy and fear, but his actions had ultimately revealed my strengths rather than my weaknesses. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most inadvertently show us what we're truly capable of overcoming. True strength isn't about revenge against those who wrong us. It's about building something better from the foundation of our own integrity and capabilities. The clause that protected me legally was just a piece of paper, but the character that allowed me to use that protection wisely came from years of choosing to do the right thing, even when it wasn't easy. 2 years later, I testified before Congress about corporate ethics reform, wearing my mother's necklace that Dr. Chen had finally given me. In the gallery, Harold sat in his wheelchair, his mind mostly gone, but his eyes still bright with something that looked like pride. Justice wasn't just served through Marcus' imprisonment or my professional success. Justice was found in the transformation of a company culture from toxic competition to collaborative innovation, in the protection of employees who deserved better leadership, and in the validation that merit and integrity can overcome manipulation and corruption. The young woman who had been humiliated and fired on her first day had become someone who could protect others from similar treatment. That transformation, more than any contract or ownership stake, represented the true victory. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where someone tried to destroy your career out of jealousy or personal vendetta? How did you handle it? And what did you learn about your own strength in the process? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to help others find it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about overcoming workplace injustice and personal betrayal. And please share this story with anyone who might need to hear that sometimes our biggest setbacks become our greatest opportunities. Thank you for listening. And remember that your integrity and capabilities are yours, regardless of who tries to take them away. Keep fighting for what's right, and trust that justice has a way of revealing itself when we least expect it.